Hello everyone, welcome back to Doing USA. Today we've got a small project. Wife wants a bluebird house, and so I've got one that we have made, and I want to give you a step-by-step of how we make these. And they're really inexpensive to make. They cost about $3 to $5 depending on where you get your wood. A lot of people will just use an old picket fence that has been torn down. They'll keep one of the staves, and they will use that for the birdhouse. What this birdhouse requires is, and I bought this one at Lowe's for $3.38. You can buy them, pick them up anywhere. I would suggest cedar and not the treated wood. Seems like the birds like them better. But what this thing requires is it's going to require 7 individual pieces that we will put together in a certain order. And in order for you to do this, you'll need one 6-foot 1x6 cedar plank. You'll need, of course, a pencil, a tape measure, some kind of a saw, and you don't have a combination square, and some kind of a saw. You don't necessarily have to have a cut-off saw or a chop saw. You can use a hand saw to make these birdhouses. It takes a little longer, but they're really simple to make. They're fun for a kid project, and like I say, you're going to need seven individual pieces cut, and we will walk you through step by step on exactly your measurements. So first of all, you're going to have your plank's going to have these dog ears. It's going to be notched with these dog ears. Turn that on the back side. You're going to leave that. That'll be your last piece. You probably will just discard it. What we're going to do is these, they say they're a 1x6, but they're actually 5.5 by 5/8. So 5.5 wide by 5/8. That's how they that's how they measure wood. So, but you're going to need two. You're going to need 2 sides. And I always like to cut these first just because they're easy. They have to be 4.5 inches wide by 5.5 inches. So let me zoom down here and let you see what I'm doing here. We need 2 4.5 by 5.5. These are going to make up our sides to our birdhouse. These 2 will end up being this side right here on the birdhouse, on each side. So you'll need 2 of them. I'm going to cut those. Now when you cut them, always cut one individually. Cut one and then go back and remeasure, because your blade is about 1/8 of an inch wide, and so all you do is put your second one on here, and you make your you don't have to have your tape measure after that for this piece, and just make you a line, and you're just going to cut this one. So you're going to need those 2 4.5 by 5.5 inch sides. Make sure you use all precautions. Make sure you use your safety PPE. So we have our 2 sides. All right, we've got those made. Now we're going to, let me grab my tape. I dropped it over here. Now we're going to have 3 8.5 inch long pieces. Let me mark this one. 8.5. I'm going to need 3. Get it lined up here. 1. Just lay them on there. Line them up. Draw your line. There's 1. I'm going to lay it right there. 2. Don't use the cut piece. Use the original to mark it, because each time they get a little bit longer and you want them pretty close. Mark your board. So I've got those sitting there. Alright. So now I have my 2 4.5 pieces and my 2 8.5-inch pieces, okay? My three of those. And we'll come back to one of these in just a few minutes and I'll show you. But now we need 2 7.25. 2 7.25-inch pieces. Let me put it down, mark down here on the edge. 7.25. Lay that on there. I need 2 of them. There's 1, and there's 2. Well, so you'll have a leftover of about 1.5 foot or so board left over that you can use on. If you do 4 or 5 of these, you'll only need probably 4 boards because you'll have enough leftover and scraps to do your last one. So I'm going to throw that down there. So I've got my 7 pieces. I've got my 2 4.5 by 5.5. I've got my 3 5.5 by 8.5. And I've got my 2 7.25 by 5.5. So what we're going to do is we have got to cut the triangle for the ends of the birdhouse. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The end of your birdhouse will have this triangle shape. So we've got to cut that out of the 7.25, and we're going to do that with both of them. Once you cut one, you just lay it on and mark the other one. This is a step where you got to be really careful when you're using your cutoff saw, because if you're using angles, and so you're getting your hand a little closer to the blade than normal. But what we're going to do is we're going to take our 7.25 pieces and we're going to lay our 4.5 piece, and if you see a knot like that, put that at the bottom, because you want to be able to have a good clean top cut. So I'm going to lay my 4.5 on here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to mark right there and right there. This is going to end up being my side wall, but I'm trying to find where it's going to meet right here. And so what I'm going to do now is I've got to find the middle of my board. Now they're 5.5. They're 5.5, so I know the middle of my board, if it's 5.5, the middle of my board is going to be 2 3/4. 2 3/4. And I'm going to take my carpenter square, my combination square, and all I'm going to do is I am going to take and I am going to move it until those two lines intersect right there. And there is my, I'm going to cut that, make that cut, do the other side, and I'm going to, well, let me turn it over. Do the other side, and I'm going to make that cut. I'm going to intersect those. That's where my triangle is. So let me cut those real quick. So you're going to lay your board on here like this, but you're going to turn your saw. You're going to turn your saw to a 45-degree angle. See, I just dog-eared this piece off. Alright? Then, because I don't want to move my saw yet, I'm going to take my board and I'm going to lay it on my other 7 1/4 board. Draw me a line. While I've got my saw at this angle, I'm going to do same thing. So now, as you can see, I've got 2 boards with these. Well, now take my saw, move it over to the other side for the other 45, and first things first, I'm going to cut this angle right here. Alright, so I've got this angle. I've got to cut this angle. This is where you got to be careful with your hands. Make sure you're out of the way of your blade. Keep your board against the fence. Push tight. There's that one. Now then, I've got these laid together. Take my pen, draw that. And that's either the front or the back of my birdhouse. There's my other side. So now, as you can see, I've got two sides, two ends, and two sides cut. And they'll go together. They'll start shaping up. But then we have something. We have a roof and we have a bottom. A roof and a bottom. So what we've got to do is one of these roofs, because you want them to overlap, this one roof we have to trim off a little piece to make it work right with when we it'll create a shingling effect for the birds, so we won't get water in our house. And this one has to be 4 3/4 inch wide by 8 1/2. So I've got my bottom and one of those, and I'll show you how that goes here in a minute. So I'm going to put this back on 0. And you can take a handsaw and you can cut this off if you want to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I need this thing to be 4 3/4 wide. So I'm just going to come over here, mark my 4 3/4. So I've got to trim off this little piece right here on both sides. It's just got to be a little bit narrower. This is another part that sort of is dangerous with your saw. Line it up on your mark, hold it against your fence. So what I've done is I've cut a little bit off of the board so that now we have one that's 4 3/4 by 8 1/2. We have two 8 1/2 by 5 1/2. We have two 4 1/2 by 5 1/2. And we have two 7 3/4 that will be used for our ends. And join us on our part 2 video to see how we put these together. And whatever you do, don't waste your day. Get out there and get doing USA.